I'm your host, Nick Jikomis, and today I'm speaking with Alexandra Elbakyan. Alexandra is the founder of Sci-Hub, a shadow library website that provides free access to millions of scientific research papers and books without regard to copyright by bypassing publisher paywalls in various ways. This website has been operating for several years now. I'm not sure exactly when it started, but basically it looks somewhat like the Google homepage, and you just sort of put in the URL or another code for any scientific publication that's found in a journal like Nature or Cell or any other scientific research publication, and almost always it then just provides you a PDF of that paper for free. So anyone anywhere can download thousands and thousands and thousands of scientific research papers that would otherwise be stuck behind paywalls. Alexandra apparently built this website all by herself, as she explains in the interview, and I discussed Sci-Hub with her, why she built it, how it works, and what she has to deal with in terms of legal challenges and other challenges around keeping it up and active. It's a very interesting story. She's a just renegade computer programmer who was frustrated with all of the paywalls that charge very high fees to access scientific research, which is often actually funded by taxpayers and peer-reviewed by scientists for free, but nonetheless, it is owned and monetized by multi-billion-dollar publishing companies, which we get into in the podcast. Alexandra is a native Russian speaker. She understands English, so I asked all of my questions of her in English, and she responded to me in Russian, and she had me hire a professional Russian translator. So when you're listening to the episode, you're actually going to hear the voice of the translator who took Alexandra's words that she spoke in Russian and translated them during our conversation to English. So it's a fairly short conversation. The conversation I had was actually longer, but it required 3 people to speak. So I edited it down to me and the translator. And for the video version, there is no video. It's just much easier for editing reasons for me to just put in the audio there. But it's a very interesting conversation that I had with Alexandra. If you've used Sci-Hub, or whether or not you know what it is or not, it's a very interesting story. So I encourage you to take a listen. As always, if you enjoy the content on this podcast, please like, share, and subscribe. You can support the podcast in a number of ways. You can click on any of the links in the episode description to some of the products that I am recommending that I use myself. You can give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. You can subscribe to the video version on either YouTube or Odyssey, and you can just share episodes that you find interesting with family or friends. This episode is supported in part by Athletic Greens. Their main product, AG1, is a comprehensive and convenient daily nutrition product containing 75 vitamins, minerals, and whole food sourced ingredients with less than 1 gram of sugar per serving, no nasty chemicals or artificial anything. It's gluten and dairy free and compatible with paleo, vegan, vegetarian, and ketogenic diets. AG1 is a quick and convenient way to supplement your diet to help ensure your body is getting the nutrients it needs. It comes in powder form, and you can mix it in water and drink it, or you can put it into a smoothie or a shake or something like that. I mix it into water and drink it with the first meal of each day, and it's super convenient. If you go to athleticgreens.com/mindandmatter, Athletic Greens will give you a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. Their vitamin D product comes in tincture form, so you just take 1 drop each day. A large fraction of the population is actually vitamin D deficient, especially in winter months when we get less sun exposure, and vitamin D is super important for the proper function of the immune system and for a variety of other things. And there's even evidence indicating that vitamin D deficiency is correlated with more severe cases of COVID-19 in those who get infected. Every time I go into the doctor each year for a checkup, I'm always told that vitamin D deficiency is very common and I should be supplementing on a daily basis. So visit athleticgreens.com/mindandmatter or click the link in the episode description. You'll get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D with your first purchase. Today's show is brought to you in part by Dosist, an all-natural cannabis company specializing in dose-controlled cannabis products made with plant-based ingredients. To learn more about Dosist, their products, and where they are available, please visit their website through the link in the episode description. And with that, here's my conversation with Alexandra Elbakyan. Alexandra Elbakyan, thank you for joining me. Can you start off by just telling everyone a little bit about who you are and what you do for those that don't know anything about you?
My name is Alexandra Elbakyan. I am 33 years old. I was born and raised in Kazakhstan. I now study and live in Russia doing my postgraduate degree. I'm also a programmer, and at one point I was very interested in neuroscience and neurocomputer interfaces.
And so one of the things that we're going to talk about, Alexandra, is something that you have built or a part of building called Sci-Hub. So again, for those that don't already know what it is, can you just concisely explain what Sci-Hub is as a tool?
My tool, Sci-Hub, allows users to get free access to scientific knowledge. The issue many people face is that publications and journals and magazines release information and publish information for huge sums of money. And a lot of people don't have access to such scientific knowledge. So I have come up with a solution by establishing a website, a tool called Sci-Hub, to resolve this problem of financial barriers.
And how does Sci-Hub actually work in terms of how someone uses the website? So for those that have never used it, how easy is it for them to gain access to scientific research and scientific papers? What do they actually have to do in order to get that?
Okay, I will give you an example. Suppose you found an article online, but to read it, you need to pay a fee of $30. So what you can do is you can go onto my website and paste the link to that article you're interested in, and then you will be able to open that article and read it free of charge.
Excellent. Yeah, I mean, that's for those listening. I've used Sci-Hub before. Virtually everyone I know inside and outside of academia that is interested in the scientific literature has used it. And it is not unlike the Google homepage. You literally just paste in a link to whatever scientific paper you're looking for, and you click a button, and then you get the PDF. So it really is that simple. And I want to start talking about why Alexandra created Sci-Hub, but also build some context for listeners around the scientific publishing industry and why it is set up the way it is. So for Alexandra, I think the next question is simply, what would you say is the foundational reason that you wanted to build a tool like Sci-Hub?
It all comes to my own example. When I was in my last year at university and I needed to do my dissertation project, and all of the materials that I needed to rely on were expensive to gain access to. And I thought, wouldn't it be nice to provide free access to this kind of thing?
So Alexandra, even while you were in a university system studying, you did not have access to all the papers that you needed. Is that accurate?
That's true. And it is still true for many students now. And now they use my website to find references for their diploma projects and dissertations. This is still true for many students now who need to find information which they can read free of charge on my website.
And I wonder too if there is, so I live in the United States, which is also where I studied, and many of my listeners will be in the United States. And when you're in a university within the United States, you typically get access to most scientific research papers within the university system through the university's subscription to all of the journals, which the universities pay an incredible sum of money to have. So for many U.S. students in colleges and postgraduate work, they might ask themselves, well, we already have it free of charge. Is that true internationally? Do graduate students and other scientists outside the U.S. always have the same privilege, or is it harder in most countries to access those journals like you would as a U.S. student?
In the US, the situation is slightly better with access to scientific works. If we compare, for example, the situation with India or China, but I actually have a lot of users, students from the US who come to my website. You have all kinds of universities in the USA. You have well-to-do universities and poorer universities.
I see. So there are a lot of people at various U.S. colleges that are using this, and as I think you said, there are the big brand name universities that are very well funded and they have access to all of the journals that their students can plug into. But that's certainly not the case for all educational institutions, even within the U.S. So you're getting a lot of people internationally, U.S. and non-U.S., using this. And I can tell you just from my own personal experience, just talking to people, virtually everyone I know that accesses papers uses Sci-Hub at least sometimes. So that'll give you a sense for the scale of what we're talking about here. Now, what are some of the major challenges that you face in running this website? Because this is effectively like a pirate website, not unlike people may have seen for other use cases for music or other things throughout the years. So what are the major challenges you're facing in running and maintaining this website?
The main challenge is the legal one for the website because it's taken to court, it's blocked in many countries of the world. It is considered to be illegal.
And so when you say it's taken to court, who exactly is presenting you with a legal challenge?
The legal challenges come from big corporations, from scientific publishers who have, you could say, appropriated knowledge and made it their private property.
So we're talking about some of the major scientific publishers. These would be the corporations, the private companies that actually own the journals which publish scientific research. And what I want to unpack here for people is just to give them a sense for how this industry works. So Alexandra, can you give us at least a general sense for most people who are not scientists, and even many people who are scientists, I don't think realize the size, the scale, and the scope of the for-profit scientific publishing industry. So when you say that a scientific publisher is taking you to court, a lot of people will listen to that and probably think, well, how, a scientific publisher, that sounds pretty obscure. How big and how powerful can these people really be? So how big is the scientific publishing industry in your estimation?
I can give you an example of one big corporation. I think their figure was given for year 2020 when it had the net profit of $1 billion for the scientific publications. It's we are talking about probably 1,000 of scientific publishers. And in reality, what happens, scientists write their scientific research, their scientific work, and then publishers publish their work and then sell it for big sums of money. So in essence, you can call that such scientists work for these publishers almost for free, or you can say for free without even adding almost.
Yeah, and for those that don't know, I'll just provide an additional example of what we're talking about here. So whenever you hear the term peer review, we always talk about this process or this component of the scientific process called peer review. And this is supposed to be and it is, in essence, a very important part of the scientific process, right? If I'm a scientist and I conduct an experiment and I get an interesting result and I publish that, I want to share that with the other people in my field and anyone who's interested in finding it. When that goes through peer review, the idea is that other experts in my field are going to critique and help me revise that study to make it stronger. What most people outside of science don't understand is the scientists who do that peer review, they're going to spend hours of their time using the full force of their expertise to usually provide a very detailed critique of that. And it's usually hours and hours of work. The journals ask you to provide that peer review, but they do not pay you at all. So when scientists are peer reviewing each other's papers, they're essentially working for the journals for free. And in exchange for that, the journal is getting the critique, they're getting the revised paper, and they don't have to pay anyone for the time and the labor that went into that component of the publication process, which is why, as Alexandra pointed out, the revenue that they generate and the profit margins that these big publishers have are exorbitant. You would be shocked by some of these numbers. So, Alexandra, my next question for you is, let me try and play devil's advocate here. So you're basically enabling your users, the scientific community, and indeed anyone in the world, to access scientific knowledge for no cost. But a potential criticism of this would be that, well, these publishers have been around for a long time. We've had scientific journals for a long time, and despite what we just said, despite the fact that peer review is basically unpaid labor that scientists give to the journals in order to conduct peer review, a lot of other work goes into publishing these papers, putting them to journals, and staffing up to have all the administrators that you need to facilitate that whole process. Aren't you going to put these people out of business, and isn't that unfair?
Not really, because you can cover your costs in other ways without limiting access to knowledge. There are other models.
And can you give us some examples of how you imagine that?
Well, as an example, with Sci-Hub, which I like the principle of, it lives on donations, the donations made by users of the website.
And so it sounds like you have some knowledge of how many people are using the website just through ordinary web analytics. What kind of, if you could summarize for us, what kind of response do you tend to get from your users about the value of Sci-Hub to them? Can you give us some examples of typical responses you get?
I have been receiving a lot of emails. In 2020, I published my email address, and straight away I started receiving thousands of emails with words of thanks. People were thanking me for helping them in their scientific research.
So let's say that what would be lost if Sci-Hub got shut down somehow? If it was completely shut down and all of the people using it around the world no longer had access to the scientific knowledge, what would be the consequence of that for science?
At the very beginning, when there were technical issues with the website, I even got feedback that all of his work in the laboratory came to a halt.
I see. So people have literally reached out to you and said that their work more or less entirely depends on having access to this through Sci-Hub.
Yes, that is right.
Interesting. So why do you think, can you talk a little bit about why it is so expensive to subscribe to these journals? So we've already talked about the fact that the peer review component of publishing is unpaid labor. So there's no cost there. So, when we think about the costs for these publishers, to the extent they're still printing physical magazines, there's the cost of printing the physical magazine. There are administrative costs associated with the editors and the people that work for the journals, facilitating the peer review process and making judgments on the initial submissions, the papers that get submitted to the journals. But the fees for accessing either single articles or subscriptions are large for individuals, and they're extremely large for universities. I can just tell people that big universities are paying exorbitant amounts of money to get subscriptions to all of the many journals that these publishers control. Why is this price so high? Where does that come from?
Simple reason, maybe just human greed, the desire to grab as much money as possible. There is another theory that this would create intentional limitations for countries such as India or China to slow down their scientific and technological progress.
Interesting. Just to add a little bit more detail to that, I think a big part of this, from my perspective in the U.S., is the structure of this whole industry allows. There's this sort of captive audience problem. So when you think about, just to take a U.S. centric view for a moment, when you think about all the universities in the U.S. and how big their endowments are, they've got a lot of money. They're going to want all of their students and postdocs and scientists to have access to all of the major scientific journals. And because of that, the universities can sort of be held hostage by these journals in some sense. They can simply say, well, this is the very high price for access to all these journals. And if you don't pay it, your students and postdocs and that whole community simply won't have access to them for free. And so the universities want to attract the best researchers, and they want to attract the students who pay tuition and all of those things. So they're more than happy to pay fees, even if the fees have been marked up significantly, in order to attract scientists and students who are going to drive their own revenue. So there is this sort of captive university academic audience that exists. And these journals are very large. So there's really just a handful of publishers. The publishers are large, I should say. The publishers own many, 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 many individual journals each. So, when you buy from Elsevier or Nature Publishing Group, the universities are buying subscriptions to very large packages, very large groups of journals. And the fees for this are absolutely extraordinary. But they need to pay them in order to keep the university system flowing as it is currently structured. So, Alexandra, given the ongoing legal troubles it sounds like you're having, I would assume that the publishers are persistent, that you are just going to have ongoing problems. Is this something that you have to spend a lot of time personally dealing with? And have you just accepted that as the nature of what you're going to have to deal with?
Until now, and it happened quite a few times on quite a few occasions, I simply ignored those legal challenges and those legal claims in court. And in the majority of them, I didn't know about them. For example, I found out about the legal challenge in Russia only after one of their websites was blocked.
Interesting. And let me start to ask you a little bit about the future of Sci-Hub. In your view, how big is the risk that Sci-Hub were to get shut down internationally? Is this a serious concern for you, or do you feel like that is unlikely to happen?
No, I don't think it will happen now, because there are too many mirrors of the website of the Sci-Hub, of this platform itself. And from the very start, the database was decentralized anyway, so it would be physically impossible to completely do away with this project, with Sci-Hub.
And so this is very interesting. You've built some kind of decentralized platform that is allowing you to do all of this. Can you give us a sense for, when did Sci-Hub start? How long did it take you to build this? And how difficult is the technical job of maintaining this?
If we go into the technical issue, the platform itself is not decentralized, but the articles in the database, and that has always been the case, they exist on torrents.
They exist on torrents. I see. And what is that? Can you explain what that means for people that don't know what that is?
Torrents is a decentralized system of storing and exchanging files.
And did you more or less build Sci-Hub by yourself, or is there a team working on this? How many people actually make up the Sci-Hub team?
What I don't get is where this myth of some sort of team comes from. From the very beginning, I made it clear that I'm working on it on my own. So I really get baffled by questions about any team.
I see. If I had to speculate, I would say that I think when people learn what Sci-Hub is, and the fact that Sci-Hub is single-handedly sort of standing up to this entire publishing apparatus, I think a lot of people naturally assume that it could not possibly be one person. But it sounds like you truly are the architect, and at least listening to you, you make it seem like it wasn't all that difficult for you. How much of a challenge was it to build this? Was it relatively easy for you?
The first version of Sci-Hub only took 3 days to create and to launch. Of course, the current version is much more different from the original version. But then we're talking about 10 years of me working on it and improving it. But really, even now, it doesn't take that long to keep it running and to operate it. Definitely not 8 hours a day as you would work full time.
Fascinating. So it sounds like you get a lot of feedback from users and you sustain the website from donations from those users. Can you remind us again what you're studying for your postgraduate studies, and what is what do you hope to do with your studies? Are you a scientific researcher yourself, and is that the path that you plan to continue on?
I've now entered the Institute of Philosophy, so I am studying philosophy to reason the principle that access to science and that science should be free and open.
And well, let me just ask you the simple question. Why would you say that you believe that?
I just genuinely have always liked this idea. It resonated with me. But if we go deeper and if we go further back to my younger years, I always supported the freedom of internet, the freedom of knowledge against copyright. And since childhood, I have been used to downloading things for school free of charge, software free of charge. So you can say that this is my subculture behind it.
Interesting. And how long have you been computer programming? Have you been doing that since you were a child? What's your background and education there?
At the age of 12, I started designing web pages, and at the age of 14, I started writing software using Delphi.
Interesting. So you've been doing this from quite a young age. So for someone who has never used Sci-Hub before, how do they actually find it if they've never gone there before?
The best way is to Google it, then get into Wikipedia and find the reference to it, the link to it.
Oh, I see. So the reference is often just in Wikipedia. So if you just Google Sci-Hub, there's a Wikipedia page for Sci-Hub that explains what it is. And the link is actually present there, so people can just go to Wikipedia and click on it. What happens? Now, you said that in some countries, Sci-Hub is banned or it's considered illegal. So depending on which country you're in, can a user actually get into legal trouble for using Sci-Hub? And has that happened to your knowledge?
Personally, I am not aware of any instances when a user would be held responsible. I don't know of those. But yes, in some countries, the website is blocked with a notice that using this website would be illegal.
I see. So some countries block it, and there's a notice that says it is illegal. Can you give us a sense? Do you know some of those countries? Can you list them out for us? What are some of the bigger ones?
But if we do talk about these countries, then it's France, Italy, Sweden, UK, Austria, Russia. In the US, the website is not blocked, but it is illegal. And in the US, I was fined $15 million, the fine, which of course I did not pay.
How? How does it? I mean, so you've built this website, you're maintaining this website, you're being sued by very large corporations which have market capitalizations in the billions of dollars. You just said that you were fined this ridiculous fee, and you're simply ignoring it. Do you feel any pressure? Do you feel any fear? Do you feel pride that you've like, how does it feel knowing that you've architected this website and it is causing this level of controversy, this level of attention from such big entities?
Fear is something I definitely don't feel. The rest of the emotions depend on what mood I am in. But of course, when you have this website and you know you've done it, you feel some kind of self-esteem for that, when you know that you are doing something that is helping others and making them more knowledgeable. So it makes you feel that you're doing something for the world, releasing scientific knowledge to the world. And many people write to you about it, telling you about it.
For those of you that have never seen the Sci-Hub homepage, a feature that I've often heard people comment on is, in addition to the main functionality, which is just a small box that you can put a URL into and a button, again, not unlike the Google homepage, typically there has been a feature on the side of the web page, which is just a little GIF of Alexandra herself waving to the user. So I think one has always gotten the impression, Alexandra, that you have felt very confident and unfearful, as you said, in yourself in this endeavor. Why is it that you feel that way? I think a lot of people, if they were doing something like this and it was at the scale that this is at, that they would feel fearful. What gives you the confidence that you appear to have?
How do I know?
Interesting. So do you have any, do you have any goals or ambitions beyond Sci-Hub? Is there anything else that you're really aiming for in your personal life and your personal career?
Yes, after the Sci-Hub, I plan to open my own scientific research institute.
Interesting. And what are your thoughts on the nature of such an institute? What are the things that you would hope to research there?
For example, the issue of eternal human life, immortality.
Immortality. Yeah, no, that's a booming area right now. Anti-aging research, and there's a lot of research going on there that's very fascinating. I'm not sure I asked this previously, but I probably should have. Are you willing to give us a sense for how many people around the world are using Sci-Hub, say, each month?
So in China, 1 million unique users, 1 million unique users from Europe. I don't recall the figures for the USA, but North America, 500,000, so slightly less, and slightly more for South America, 700,000 users.
We know that many of the people using Sci-Hub are professional scientists working within universities. And even though they themselves might be using Sci-Hub to get easy access to papers, they are still submitting their own research to the big journals owned by the big publishers in order to get published in those journals. And I'm curious what Alexandra's attitude is towards those professional scientists. Does she believe that they are being hypocritical in doing that? Does she believe that they should stop submitting their own work to the big journals?
Yes, of course, it would be great if all scientists started publishing their work with open access. But unfortunately, or fortunately, their career depends on publication in these journals with high ratings. So they have to publish their work and submit their work to these commercial publishers.
I see. I'm curious, actually, Alexandra, is your ability to travel internationally affected at all?
I try not to travel too much.
So it's relatively easy for you to run Sci-Hub. It's not that difficult for someone with your skills to do this. It's essentially a one-person operation. And can you, I don't know if you can go, how much detail you want to go into here, but can you give us a little bit more detail on your technical computer science background or the type of skills that were required to do something like this?
If we go back to the languages, the programming languages, Sci-Hub was designed in PHP, which was the most popular language for the web 10 years ago when Sci-Hub was created. And if we take Facebook, Facebook was also designed in PHP.
I see. So moving forward, you'll publish messages to people on the Sci-Hub homepage. You did mention you have a Twitter account, and I've definitely seen your Twitter account. I think you have a fairly large following. Have you received any pushback on the social media networks? Are they trying to restrict you at all, given the nature of what you do?
Yes, Sci-Hub also had its own Twitter account, which was quite popular, and it had around 185,000 followers. But at the beginning of 2021, I think it was the 6th of January, Twitter blocked that account without an option of having it restored, which happened just before the same happened to Donald Trump's Twitter account.
Interesting. So it happened at the same time as that, which may be a coincidence. Maybe they were just going through a lot of bannings at that time. But it sounds like...
Yes, I know. In that particular time, in that particular period, a lot of people got banned.
I see. But it sounds like there was no explanation given for why Sci-Hub in particular was banned. You just sort of logged on one day and that was the case.
Well, they did refer to Sci-Hub breaking some rules, to some counterfeit content, but nobody really gave any detailed explanations.
Well, Alexandra, thank you for your time. I think what you've built is fascinating, to say the least. It's very impressive what it can do and how many people are using it. So thank you for joining me.
Thank you very much for your invitation.